Some quick background on Evan. He is currently the Director of Event and Guest Services at The Ohio State University. He's served in that position since 2019, and he oversees 1,400 of OSU's frontline event staff. He is a native of Westerville, Ohio, or he currently lives in Westerville, Ohio, excuse me. He's from Mount Vernon, Ohio. He lives there with his wife / the head coach of the household, Chelsea, and their son, CJ, who is just turned 1 recently. So a couple more facts about Evan. His favorite CAOS cabin is Club Crestwood. His favorite trading post beverage is a tie between the whiskey sour and the spotted cow. And he is a sucker for cheese curds every time he visits the state of Wisconsin. Evan, I'll have you take it away.
Thanks, Robbie. Really excited to join all of you today. I wish we were in person for real CAOS. Unfortunately, we're not this year, but I'm excited to share with you some of the things we've got going on in my world here at Ohio State, and share some of my experiences from my past employers, my current employer, and whatnot. So I'm excited to talk really about staff, and that's what I do here at Ohio State. I help manage our all of our part-time event staff. So I'm really passionate about it, really love working with our passionate staff. For all of you that work with ushers and ticket takers and security staff, you know how passionate they can be, especially about the sport, about the university, about the organization and whatnot. So I really just love working with them. So hopefully today, my presentation, I'm going to share with you some of the things that we've been working on here with our organization, with our staff, with our event staff. So Robbie talked a little bit about me already. Graduate of Ohio State. While I was an Ohio State student, I worked as an intern, an undergrad intern for the 4 years in our event services department here at Ohio State, which was really, really exciting opportunity for me. I know we probably have a lot of interns on the call today, so I would encourage you guys, if you haven't already, go out and find really, really good internships. Find as many internships as you can, whether they're paid or unpaid. It's some of the best learning experiences that you'll probably ever get. There's so much that I learned during those 4 years of my undergrad outside of the classroom that I still use to this day, and I use every single day. So for all of the interns out there, I'd encourage you to do that. I also left Ohio State right after graduation. I went and worked for the American Red Cross. I worked in community programming, fundraising, and some of our events there, and managed a couple hundred of our volunteers, which is a little bit of a different experience than managing paid staff. So it was a really good experience working in the nonprofit world and working at the Red Cross, one of the premier nonprofits in the country and across the world, really. So a good experience managing people there. And then since then, I've been working at Ohio State Athletics, managing our part-time staff. So we have about 1,400 part-time staff across all of our venues, working in event management, game management, guest services, all of those different areas. So here at Ohio State, as I mentioned, our stadium operation requires about 1,200 part-time staff. We call them redcoats and we call them stadium ushers, kind of two different groups that work at our stadium. And then we have about another 500 staff that work at our arena, the Jerome Schonstein Center, which Robbie didn't want to have to try to pronounce that name today when introducing me. But we have about 500 staff at our arena as well. And so we always say that full-time staff, we don't manage the staff. We don't ever serve our guests, really, to be honest. Sorry, we don't serve the guests. Our part-time staff do. So, I view my role as the person that's there to take care of all of the people that you see on the screen. We're there to support their needs, support their operation so that they can take care of the guests. It's very rare that I ever speak to a guest or see a guest at an event. I may be the guest services director, but 99.9% of the interactions that our fans have at an event are with our part-time staff. So it's so critical that we work hard to take care of that staff so that they can then take care of our fans. I'm going to try to show you guys this video. This is a really old video of Steve Jobs. Really quick, 20 seconds on his take on what leadership, management, dealing with people is.
The greatest people are self-managing. They don't need to be managed. Once they know what to do, they'll go figure out how to do it. They don't need to be managed at all. What they need is a common vision, and that's what leadership is. What leadership is having a vision, being able to articulate that so the people around you can understand it, and getting a consensus on a common vision. The greatest.
So, you know, he said once they know what to do, they will go out and they will figure out how to do it. What they need is a common vision, and that's what leadership is. So I'm going to talk about kind of what our vision is here at Ohio State that we've been implementing over the last few years. This quote, or you know, what Steve Jobs said really resonated with me as we, during my time at the Red Cross and then my time here at Ohio State, is really, as a leader of people, our job is to help create that vision for our staff, whether it's part-time staff, whether you manage full-time staff, whether you're going to be an athletic director one day. Your job as a leader of people is really to create that vision that everybody can get around, and not necessarily managing the tedious day-to-day of what your staff do. So for us, what is that common vision? We kind of went through a process as we looked through this a few years ago as we kind of evaluated our entire operation. We had to figure out, you know, what do we do? What do our employees do? What are they responsible for? What kind of impact does our team of employees have on the guest? And how do employees engage with others? And so by going through all of those kind of questions, we truly realized that every single decision that we made, that our staff make, that our event staff make, has to be traced back to the vision that we set. That vision that we've put forth in front of all of our event staff. So I always like to give credit where credit's due. What organization has created the most, you know, compelling employee vision? It's really Disney and the Disney 4 Keys. They obviously go, you know, above and beyond what you would expect from a customer service standpoint. They are the gold standard for customer service and serving guests and serving people. And truly, you know, if you've ever been through a Disney Institute course or heard of the Disney Institute, I have actually never attended a Disney Institute course, but if you've ever heard kind of the principles behind their course and how they manage people at their parks, it really is about taking care of their staff so that their staff can take care of their guests. So Disney has set that vision with their 4 Keys program. So they encourage people to do this, but what did we do here at Ohio State? We totally ripped it off and we created our own vision. It's our Brutus's 4 Block O's is what we call it. It's a 4-pillar system really. It's safety, experience, energy, and excellence. Those are our 4 pillars that we have here at Ohio State. And this is really kind of the starting point of our vision, quote unquote, that we've created for our event staff. So this 4 pillars really is kind of the guiding light for all of our staff, if you will. Not to be cliche, but we put together these 4 Block O's for our staff, and we've created an entire system around it, which I'll talk about. But really, every decision that we make has to lead back to this vision, to Brutus's 4 Block O's. There's nothing more important than the safety, the experience, the energy, and the excellence in our operation. And every decision that our staff makes, every decision that we as full-time staff make, has to lead back to one of these 4 pillars, so that we always know that we're doing the right thing, we're doing it the right way, we're doing it at the right time for our guests. So, you know, with that, vision must be visible. I can't stress this enough. We've created an entire brand around Brutus's 4 Block O's and this vision. And then as we went through this process, we identified every possible way to put it in front of our staff. So you know, if you're looking at creating a program for your event staff, I can't stress enough that you can't just create a slogan, you can't just create an acronym, you can't just create a phrase, you know, announce it in a staff meeting and then move on. That's just not how it will actually be effective. You have to find ways to put this in front of your staff. You have to find ways how to live this vision every single day. So, you know, I worked part-time at our local zoo and aquarium for a number of years, and they had a very similar type of program, but all it really was just kind of an acronym, and the staff, you know, were confused. What do these letters even stand for? I know we always try to get creative creating acronyms with, you know, staff engagement programs and recognition programs. I always felt like we spent more time trying to remember what, you know, the letters of the acronym stood for than actually what were the principles, what was the theme of the actual program. So just remember, it can't be a slogan, an acronym. You have to live it every single day as you implement any sort of vision or program. So I'm going to kind of walk through what our program looks like, what our Brutus's 4 Block Goes program looks like, and how our staff rally around it. So the first thing is we do a Monday news and notes email to our event staff. This is generally a bi-weekly email. We say bi-weekly, but often it becomes weekly, especially during the busy season, which the busy season seems to run from about June until about June every year. But we send out this news and notes email to our staff, and it's actually not a fluffy newsletter as you probably think. So we tend not to use this ever to do like team member spotlights, recognition, some of the more fluffy things. We find this to be a better use to provide key employment information. What is going on right now or coming down the road that I need to know so that I can do my job really, really well. So we use it to do a lot of information sharing from the university to our event staff. Because there's nothing more that our event staff want or need than good communication. They want to be in the know, they want to know what's going on. So we use this Monday news and notes email to do that. One of the other things, we do themed blog posts in there. So oftentimes, a lot of times they're around my own experiences out in the community at restaurants and different, theme parks, zoos, anywhere that I go. I tend to have experiences and then I share those through a blog post. How does that relate to us? Or I see blog posts or news stories out there from other venues, and I kind of share my own take on that. So we include themed blog posts, and how does that relate to safety, experience, energy, and excellence? One of the other ways that we keep this in front of them is our presentation branding. So every single presentation, every single training session, the exact one that you're looking at right now, we use this branding around it so that safety, experience, energy, excellence is always front of mind for them. It's always kind of in their face, no matter what type of presentation setting that they're in or training session that they're in, they're always seeing that. Another thing we do in all of our recruitment materials, whether it's printed materials, whether it's our website, a recruitment video that we've got, everything talks about safety, experience, energy, excellence from the outset. So it's important to start that mindset early, is to put it in front of them in their recruitment process. So before they even become an employee. When they do become an employee, we have interview questions that are related to it. So we ask them, what does safety mean to you? What does experience mean to you? So it gives our interviewers a little bit of insight into the candidate's mindset, when it comes to those four main pillars. So we do that, throughout the entire interview process where we're putting that in front of them. Our new employee orientation, that entire program goes really in depth. We spend a good portion of our orientation setting those expectations, putting forth what Brutus's 4 Block Goes means. What does safety, experience, energy, excellence mean to us? What does it mean to our guests and our operations? So we put that forth in our new orientation. We've branded our handbook. So every time they whip that out, I like to think they have it out at every event, but we know that's not true. But we branded the staff handbook for them. We ask questions through our annual engagement survey about Brutus's 4 Block Goes and their engagement with the organization overall. A lot of workplace signage. We've redesigned some of our staff entryways, messaging centers using TVs. So we put this branding in front of them when they walk into our building. So again, it's not just a slogan that you throw out there to them. How do you put it in front of them as often as possible? So this was over at the arena. What you see on the screen now, we did this past fall. We branded their entire entryway that leads to our uniform distribution area. So they get that feel of Brutus's 4 Block O, safety, experience, energy, excellence, the Ohio State brand, right from the very beginning when they walk in the door. Other little touch points, we have it at our time clocks. We have it at our little uniform mirrors where they can check themselves before they go out. Wayfinding signage in our lower level of our facilities to get to our uniform areas. And then of course we take it one step further. And this is where I think a lot of folks or a lot of organizations kind of fall short, is the recognition side. So you can put it in front of them all they want, but until you include some sort of recognition element, taking it that next step further, and building your recognition program around it, it's going to fall flat. Like I said, you can create that acronym, but if the only time they ever hear it is in a staff meeting when a supervisor says, "Don't forget about making it great," or whatever the acronym is, it doesn't matter. So we've built our recognition program around Brutus's 4-block O's. So not only is it creating the expectation of our staff from the very beginning, it then creates the recognition on the back end. So when they do meet our expectations or they exceed our expectations, we can reward them. So this was another thing totally stolen from Disney, which they encourage. It's a recognition card. This is able to be filled out on the spot by supervisors. Peer-to-peer recognition. Coworkers can recognize each other. Interns can recognize staff. It's a little carbon copy card. It's just kind of an on-the-spot recognition. Hey, thank you. I noticed you did a really good job handling that guest. I'm going to write you up. And then we use these cards for prizes. So they go into prize drawings weekly, monthly, depending on the area that the staff member works in. Put these recognition cards into a drawing. We also do weekly recognition recaps that we send out or we utilize in our staff briefings. Our years of service program for our staff, we utilize the branding through that, and we put the branding on all of our years of service awards and programs. And we do have, you probably see the 50-year mark on that screen. We do have a lot of staff that have hit 50 years of service, which is just mind-boggling. I'm hoping I'm long retired in a nicer spot than Ohio 50 years from now, but that is an incredible side note I always like to point out. The dedication of that staff. We do an end of the season recognition event as well. So as part of this program, we allow all of our supervisors to award somebody on their crew an award in each of those 4 categories. So, Supervisor Bob, he gets to pick 4 people on his crew from that season that was just really tops when it comes to safety, or who is really, dedicated to providing the best experience for guests, or who just showed the most energy when they came to work and was just most excited to be here and to serve our guests. So they get a certificate, they get a lapel pin. We do a little awards banquet at the end of the season. Usually Gene Smith, our athletic director, or others will come and speak at that, and just kind of a fun little opportunity for them to grab some food and drink on us. We present some awards to them. They get to bring a family member with them, which oftentimes our staff don't really get to bring family to events. So it's really exciting when they can bring a family member to participate, because for event staff, oftentimes it's just as tough on the family to be away for so many events as it is on the staff member themselves. So what's so cool about creating a vision for your department, for your team, for your event staff, is it really does a lot of things for you. It creates the focus for them. It creates goals for them. Vision starts to create behaviors from your staff, and it starts to create habits and creates a mentality amongst your event staff. And that's what we've really seen over the last 4 years, 5 years since we've implemented this. Over that time, it's really started to create good habits and the mentality of our staff, so that when they come to work and they're serving our guests, they really are thinking about safety, experience, energy, excellence in the back of their mind at all times, which is what ultimately is going to help serve our guests better if they have that mentality and that culture from the very beginning. So you've created a vision for your team, your event staff. What do you do now? I got to tell you, you can't wash your hands and move on. Once you've set that vision, you still have to support and manage your staff. And this is what organizations are really good at. They're either really, really good, and this is my personal theory, organizations are really good at setting the vision, but then they don't do a really good job managing and supporting their staff, or they're really good at managing and supporting their staff, but they don't have a vision. They don't have a good culture that they put together for their staff. So once you do that, once you've got that vision, I like to say that you have to manage the staff cycle, as I call it. And this is kind of our take on it here at Ohio State, how we turn from that that leadership, setting that vision for people, to how do we manage them on a day-to-day basis? How do we take them through that process doing their job really well, and how do we support them? So I call it the staff cycle. It's kind of a 360 look at their entire involvement with us, and how do we do that? So what does the staff cycle do? It sets your plan for how you're going to support and manage your employees, but it also creates predictability, and it creates processes for your staff. So for your staff, there's nothing more that is more frustrating than when you have part-time event staff that like to guess, they like to assume, they conjecture. There's lots of confusion among them. What you have to do from the outset is create those processes, create the procedures, create it from the outset so that that's eliminated from the very beginning. So, back in that video, Steve Jobs said, once they know what to do, they'll go figure out how to do it. And that's usually, I think that's very much the case for full-time staff when you're managing, full-timers in an organization, especially a creative type organization. But you can't really do that with event staff. You can't do that with part-timers. You can't hire them and cut them loose. We know how that goes, right? I think a lot of us have been in that instance, and we all have some of those squirrels that work for us that create problems. So you can't just hire them and let them go. So you have to manage that staff cycle from beginning to end. So I'm going to walk through it real quickly with everybody, what that staff cycle looks like. So the first one, design and develop. You really have to look at your organization. What positions do you need to be successful? And how many ticket takers, security staff, ushers, where are they positioned? How are they positioned? How many do we have? How many do we need? You really have to do kind of that 1,000-foot view of your organization to figure out what you really need. And maybe what the makeup of your staff right now isn't what you actually need. So is it a good opportunity to change into something else? This is also a good opportunity as you're looking in this design, developing, world. How can you create that vision? How can you put that together? How can you set that up for your event staff? So, for us, it was how do we put safety, experience, energy, excellence forward in front of them at all times? How do we put that brand in front of them? How do we create a brand around that? How do we use our personalities like a mascot, like Brutus Buckeye, to help us put forward that Ohio State brand? All the usuals: creating job descriptions, creating handbooks, pocket guides, things that they're going to carry. So that's truly what's going to be your the backbone of the organization, is also what you have written down for them through your job descriptions, your post orders, handbooks, pocket guides. That's how you lay out your policies, procedures, expectations, so you have it for them in the first place. The next step is recruiting talent. So creating really good quality recruiting material is important. We're fortunate that we can rely on our creative services team at Ohio State. They've been very much engaged in this program with us, creating this brand for Brutus's 4 Block O's, and then helping support us with any sort of materials or anything that we may need to recruit staff to our organization. So that's why we build this brand around it, so we can recruit better. Utilizing grassroots recruiting is going to be important. A lot of times we get some of our best employees from internal referrals. Your current employees are going to know who's a good fit for the organization. And then the other part of that really is putting together some sort of street team of part-time employees that can go out into your community, go out into the Columbus area here and recruit people that maybe our event staff don't know or they don't have a relationship with. So how can we attract other talent to our organization, to our team of part-time event staff as well? And then finally, looking for opportunities to partner. So that might be even looking for opportunities to partner with sponsors that support the university or support our teams. Nationwide Insurance is a big sponsor of Ohio State. They've got thousands of employees. I bet a lot of them are looking for part-time jobs, right? So how do we partner with some of our sponsors to offer part-time employment opportunities to come work at Ohio State game day? The next area, number 3, screen and intake. So just create a good system for accepting applications. Some of you may work in a university where you have a good system in place working through the university, but some of you may be in a position where you have to create your own, or create your own system, or use third-party websites to collect applications. So just having a good process in place for that, a good process for interviewing staff. This event the event industry is tough when you're talking about recruiting large numbers of people. So you have to create an interview process that's really efficient and manageable for a lot of people at once. So, you know, when we interview full-time staff, you can't really do a committee of people and a 15, 30-minute interview of somebody that's going to come work part-time. Unfortunately, and unfortunately, you kind of have to go through a different interview process, often with like cattle call interviews. You may use your supervisors to set up. Maybe you have a dozen supervisors come in and you're doing a dozen interviews at once, but you know, it only takes you a couple of nights to go through 100 or 150 people that want to interview for a position. So creating that interview process will be important, so that once you do hire people, you have a good basis to onboarding and engage. So notifying offers, declines, developing a one-page onboarding checklist to give your new hires. That is so important that I've found at my time at the Red Cross and here at Ohio State, is creating an onboarding checklist, because we've probably all been in a full-time job where we get a job offer and there's an onboarding process of sorts, and you don't really know. You're just kind of waiting on an HR person or your supervisor to tell you what's going on. There's no real timeline. There's no real, here's steps A, B, C, D to take in order. So think about your own experiences as a full-time staff. You've probably struggled with that as you've gone into a new job. Your part-time staff are going to struggle just as much. So create an onboarding checklist for them. So what is the process to do their background check, to do you know, their employment paperwork? Is it online? Is it on paper? New hire orientation, accessing a scheduling website. So a quick one-sheeter of what they should expect. So when you offer them that job, you send them an email, or you've called them and then you're going to follow up with an email. Send them that checklist so that within minutes they know exactly what the next steps are. That's going to help lead that staff to truly follow through and end up being fully employed down the road. They actually will follow through on all the steps. During this onboarding and engagement process, it's also important to create that excitement for the job. So for us, what we found is it's a dream for many people in our community to become a redcoat or become an usher. And when they get that email from us or that call, they're just over the moon. They're so excited. It's been this lifelong thing that they've always wanted to do, and they're just so excited for it. So how do you create excitement for that job around it? So use exciting language, talk about how they're joining an elite team, point out the exciting opportunities that will await them at orientation. What are some of the cool things that they're going to be able to do? Next thing is training and placing those employees. So develop a new hire orientation. You know, think about what an employee needs to know from your organization to be successful, from the moment they leave their house until they get back home at the end of the night. So develop your new hire orientation with that mindset there from start to finish. What should they expect, or what process do they need to go through when they leave their house all the way until they get back home? So start out with, how do they schedule? What is the attendance policy? And then move on to uniform. Talk about what is the uniform, so that they know, how do I get dressed? What am I supposed to wear? And then move on to parking, and how do I park when I get in the venue? Then move on to, how do I enter the venue? What security checks? Can I bring bags in? You know, where do I go once I get in that front door? And just take them through that step-by-step process. That's what a good first part of a new hire orientation should be, is dealing with all of that housekeeping in a start to finish type order. But think about what they need to know. I think it's always a really good idea for you as a manager, as a leader, to go through that process for them. Go through that process of, you know, where do they park? How do they get in? What are and look for those stressors that they're going to encounter along that way. And that's going to help you build a better orientation, a better training process, as you kind of understand what they go through to become an employee, and then subsequently as they're working for you guys as an employee. And then obviously, you know, the second half of your new hire orientation is going to be a lot on values and your vision that you've set. And then eventually you'll move into job training. You'll do some hands-on job training. What's really good, in my theory, about, you know, an orientation, you know, such as this, you can go into job duties, talk about what they're going to do a little hands-on training, but In the end, you've hired them because they're really, really smart, right? Hopefully you've hired really, really smart people, really good people to work for you. So you don't have to make a new hire orientation, teach every single job duty or every single possible scenario that they may ever encounter. So teach the principles, teach the vision in that orientation, and your staff are going to be much more engaged. With that training, create opportunities to engage with our brand. So ensure that your mascot can attend. We've been doing this for years. We have Brutus come to all of our new hire orientations. Staff member checks in, they turn in their HR paperwork, they turn the corner, and then they run into Brutus. And they had no idea that Brutus was going to be there, but he's right around the corner. We give them their first Ohio State Buckeyes hat. We take a photo with them. They're posing with Brutus, and then we send them those photos after orientation. So it just creates that excitement from the moment they walk in the door. That they are part of the Ohio State family. You know, a lot of people don't ever get to take a photo with a mascot, which is kind of crazy thinking, but for them, it's kind of one of those memorable moments that they'll remember for years. And it's creating that cool opportunity from the beginning, from the first moment that they're employed with you at orientation, to be a part of that team. So if you can, present them with uniform pieces, name tags, anything that can kind of make them feel like they're part of the team now, as much as possible. Finally, the last part of that training and placing process is using surveys after you do your orientations to find out what do they want to do. So if you manage a wide range of staff, like you're managing security, guest services, ticket scanning, ushering, you know, different areas. Hopefully you've explained those different types of positions in your orientation, but try to do some preference surveys after orientation to find out what they're most interested in, because you want to make sure that you place your employees into the right roles. There's nothing worse than, you know, assuming that, you know, Bob wants to work security, but turns out Bob hates doing security stuff. Maybe he does that during his full-time job. During the day, and he doesn't want to do it here when he comes to work at Ohio State. But we thought Bob would be good in security, so we've been putting him there for, you know, event after event, and he eventually quits because he hates it. So we like to do surveys at the very beginning to kind of find out what are their interests, and, you know, what do they want to do, especially after they've come and heard what the job truly is through that orientation process. Number 6 is retaining and recognizing your staff. So consider creating a coach program for your new hires. So look at some of those key veteran staff that can be positive role models for your event staff, and then create ways where, you know, maybe they buddy up for the first few events that they work, utilizing, you know, or creating it around this coach program. They buddy up together, they learn from each other. Not only is it, I think, good for the new hire, obviously, but I think it's also good for some of your veteran staff to get the perspective and the interaction with some of the new staff. There's nothing more that I hate than when some of our veteran staff call people rookies, newbies, the new people. That's not really a welcoming environment, really, for new staff to come into. So I like using the idea of a coach program because it gets some of those veteran staff away from that mindset, and they feel, you know, kind of that motherly, fatherly, you know, love around the new staff that are joining us. So I like coach programs for that reason. Develop meaningful ways to recognize. So find multiple different ways. People don't always like to be recognized in the same way. So sometimes it's online, sometimes it's in person. Sometimes people love the tangibles. Getting the tchotchkes and the giveaways is what some people like. Some people don't like being recognized at all. They don't want any sort of recognition, not even a thanks, not even a pat on the back. Everybody's different, so use different methods to recognize your staff. And then always respond to every employee every single time. This is how you're going to retain good people in your organization. So lack of communication can really break any sort of team, your event staff team, your supervisor team, you know, anybody that's working for you. Lack of communication can really break it. So I have this personal policy that I respond to every single employee every single time. So every time they email me or call me, they're going to get an answer from me within 24 hours, because I think it's just so important that we respond to them they know that they're, we're here to talk to them, to listen. Don't put somebody off 2 weeks because you don't have an answer to a question maybe they emailed you about or called you about. If you don't have an answer, that's fine. Respond to them. Tell them, hey, I don't have an answer, but I'm going to check into it. I'm going to reach out to my colleague over here and see why this facility thing isn't working properly. Don't wait weeks until you can find an answer or find an excuse for whatever situation it is. Respond to every employee every single time, no matter how crazy they sound, no matter how crazy the idea is, no matter how ticked off the employee is about something, respond to them every single time. Our job is to make their life easier and remove all of those roadblocks. And by just communicating with them, it goes a really, really long way to creating a really fun, engaging, and easy environment for them to work in. And then number 7, evaluate. So conduct engagement surveys. I love surveys. I think these are the best ways to really understand the pulse of your staff, what's going on. So survey your new hires within the first 90 days or after the first 3 events. We send out a specific new hire survey to them after they've worked a few times. I get really, really good feedback from this because it gives us an idea or a look into what their experience is as an employee. What were the stress points? What were the things that they wish they would have known? That's actually one of the questions we say. What would you have wanted to know before your first event that you didn't? So how can we, adjust our training or onboarding process around some of these surveys? So I think it's important to survey your new hires, and then it's important to survey all of your employees every single year so that you can really get a pulse on them. So don't do that survey and then put it on the shelf. Follow-up to that is you've got to create and communicate your follow-up plan from that survey. So we put together a kind of a key actions document. It lays out every single data point from our survey, a roll-up of all of those results. We meet together as a team, as an event management team, then we meet with senior leadership, and then we even meet with Gene, our athletic director, wants to see the results of our survey every year. So we go and meet with him and we review the results of our survey and what are our key actions that we're going to take from this survey. So we put down in this follow-up document that we create, we put down we're going to do XYZ when it comes to uniforms because of your feedback. We're going to do XYZ when it comes to scheduling. We're going to do XYZ when it comes to training. We're going to do XYZ, and that that kind of creates our project list, our vision, our goals for the next year. As a full-time event management staff through this survey. So I love the engagement surveys because it really, it allows them to have a voice. And then because we put time into the follow-up and letting them know that we're listening and that we're going to take these action steps, it creates that trust amongst the event staff as well. And use informal discussion time. I love BSing with our staff, BSing with our supervisors. All the time so that we can hear, kind of hear what their feedback is, pitch ideas. That's how I pitch ideas to them. It's just through informal discussions at an event. It kind of puts out there where our things are going, where our thoughts are going. So build that trust through improvement. Use these surveys, use how you build this program to build trust amongst your staff. I'm going to share two final things here. As part of the presentation. I think it's important as you build a vision for your team, as you figure out how you're going to manage and supervise the day-to-day, how you're going to lead and how you're going to manage, you have to identify what the real problems are in your organization. So analyze the weaknesses. Don't try to band-aid the problems that are going on in your organization. Don't give that half-hearted response to a half-heard complaint. So you have to get to the root of the problem and fix that. Because I say too often, and we do it here at Ohio State, and we did it at the Red Cross where I came from before that, and we look at side effects of our real problems and we try to fix side effects. We don't try to fix the real problem. And a very simple example that comes to mind is our credentialing at our stadium. We have issues where we use this button system and we have these letter codes that represent different areas, and it works great. But some of our staff don't know what all these letter codes mean. They don't understand what they mean. And then as part of that too, there's only certain gates that credentials can come into our stadium. So what do you have when you have staff that aren't following the rules, that aren't doing it the right way? We go and yell at them, right? No, that's the wrong thing. Um, we're fixing a side effect by going and telling them, hey, you need to be more careful about this. You need to make sure you're only letting certain credentials in the certain gates. That's not the real problem. Looking at that situation, the real problem is we've never published anywhere. We don't have it written anywhere where staff can bring in or where staff can come in with credentials. We don't have a little key with what all those letters and buttons mean for the different zones in our stadium. And so by simply printing that on the back of the credential, it made it so much better. So we could have gone and told our staff and retrained and recoached a million times over and yelled at them, why aren't you doing this right? We looked and we found the real problem is we haven't put the information out there properly for them. We fixed the real problem, that solves the entire situation. So throughout all of your processes, always remember to look for the real problems and not just trying to fix the side effects of that real problem. My last thing I'm going to leave you with here is culture versus engagement. Something I learned when I was at the Red Cross, that culture and engagement are two very different things. So culture is the system. It's the way we do things around here. But engagement is how do people feel about the way we do things around here. So culture is the system, you know, what have you built at around your organization, but engagement is how do your employees feel about it. You can have a great culture, but your employees don't like it. You could have a terrible culture, your employees don't like it. Engagement is going to be how do your employees feel about how the way we do things around here. Do they like it? Do they hate it? Do they love it? Do they hate you? Do they love you? Sort of thing. Question time. That's all
Awesome.
I got.
You have tons of questions actually, so we'll just jump right into them. Well, first, actually, I'll say that was really great. I think you really hit on the overall focus of from all the way from your building of the vision all the way through to the evaluation process. So I really appreciate that. But let's dive into some of these questions. Do you do a sort of referral incentive for your staff if they bring anybody on?
Yeah, so every year we hire a different number of people every year. Our arena, we kind of hire separately for our arena and then our stadium and our other facilities. So it's kind of two different jobs that are available to event staff. And for each of those types of position, each position, we do that referral incentive. If you refer somebody, they get hired on, they start working, we put you into a drawing for gift cards and some other prizes. So we don't do anything like cash because we work, we're a state government organization. So bonuses and cash bonuses, check bonuses, that sort of thing is tough. So what we found effective is just putting prizes out there. So if you do refer somebody, your name goes into a prize drawing. So one of the most favorite ones is actually parking permits for football season. So usually the grand prize, we'll pick a handful of them. The bigger prize is you get a season parking permit for the parking garage right across the street from the stadium. So that's kind of the ultimate prize that we give away for referrals.
Kind of going off that thought, you talked about the weekly and monthly raffles that you do. What sort of products are they? Similar to what you just referenced? Are they a little different for those raffles?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we get a lot of gift cards. We get a lot of tchotchkes and swag either through fan experience and promotions. We get some stuff from the team shop. We have a very, very minuscule budget, and by minuscule budget, I mean maybe a couple $100 to spend on this sort of thing. So what we did this past year really was try to look at some of the things that we have internally that we could utilize to create, those cool incentives and those drawings. So parking is always a big thing. So we kind of have a staff parking lot right next to our arena, and so every month we pulled one of the staff hang tags that we give out to full-time staff. And every month we draw a new part-timer and they get to utilize that staff hang tag to get into the lot. And that cost us really nothing at all. Another prize we give out, we have meal cards. We're a Levy property, so we have the little Levy meal cards. Swipe at the concession stand, it's preloaded with like $12 on it. So we give those to staff that are working like 10, 12-hour days. But what we found also was it's really not expensive, especially after you account for the royalties that would go away. It's a couple bucks per meal. But we raffle off that card every month. A new person gets a meal card, and it costs us a couple dollars for each event that they work. And the staff member that wins it might work 4 or 5 events that month. So we're talking a few dollars that you don't even see on a budget line, to be quite honest. It's not like you're spending it on tchotchkes and whatnot. So try to find those ways. How do you utilize, your own building, your parking, the things that the staff love that don't really cost anything, as recognition prizes?
Rating the marketing department storage maybe as well.
Exactly, yeah. Rate everything you can find. Bobbleheads, staff love bobbleheads, right?
Perfect. Do you guys do background checks on all your hires? And then if so, do you do periodical checks throughout their tenure?
Yeah, so interesting. Ohio State is a state university, so all of our employees are state government employees. They pay into a public pension system, all that stuff. So they're background checked upon hire. They go through an extensive background check upon hire like any state employee would. But we don't have those regular background checks. So I know a lot of venues, especially if you're using third-party staff, you might utilize a system like Redtail or some of the other checks that do monthly or annual checks on them. Unfortunately, we don't. We can't because they are state government employees. So there's regulations about what background checks you can even conduct. There are policies and state law, ethics laws that if they do have some sort of charge or convictions or anything like that, they have to disclose them. Of course, there's no surefire way that they are, but it's interesting because we work in a government type setting that it's a little different than what you might expect in a pro world or a private employer setting or a private college setting.
And then do you guys what are the food options? Do they have concession stand vouchers, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so all staff, for every single event, we give a 50% off coupon to our event staff. So basically the way that works really, being a Levy property and the way our agreement's set up and royalties and whatnot, what portion of each meal is Ohio State, for a guest meal, is Ohio State's, revenue versus Levy's revenue. We give out a 50% off coupon. Basically, we forego Ohio State's royalty on the sale for the staff. So, when you buy that $4 hot dog, maybe $2 is going to Levy, $2 goes to Ohio State. So what we do is we give out those 50% off coupons to our staff. Levy still makes their money. No big deal for them. They don't care. They love it. People are buying their food. We forego our royalty because in the end, it's really not that much money that we would probably make off the event staff working, but it's a very, 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 very popular perk for them to be able to get 50% off all of their food purchases at the concession stand. So I think that's a thing you really should look at your venues, whoever your concessionaire is. Look at your own agreement to see if that's a benefit that you could provide. Because in the end, when staff have to pay full price for their food, most of them just aren't going to buy it in the first place. So you're not making any money anyways, because the event staff are not paying $4 for a hot dog or, $8 for a hamburger. They're just not going to pay it. So you're not going to lose out money by offering a 50% off incentive. But I bet a lot of you, depending on your concessionaire, could probably offer some sort of an incentive like that.
Perfect. And then you talked about making sure you get to the root of the problem when you're addressing different issues that your staff might have. Can you touch on a little bit maybe the discipline process, or maybe just how you deal with certain situations when it's maybe not going the way you want it to?
Yeah. So another interesting aspect of being in a state government role within a university, there's policies and procedures in place for this sort of thing, whether they're part-time staff, full-time staff. We have a very engaged HR department that services athletics, and so we really follow university policies, which is great because we don't have to try to develop our own policy or plan or conflict resolution plans with our staff. We don't have to develop all of that ourselves. We don't have to create anything from scratch. So we really rely on the university's process to do that. So most of the time it's that stepped kind of conflict resolution. Have an issue with a staff member, we bring them in. We have a meeting with them depending on the severity of the issue. We coach them on it. We formally document that the incident occurred or whatever happened. Put it on file. You know, depending on the seriousness of it, HR might be in there from day one of that issue, or if it's a continual problem that's just kind of small building up, then we bring in HR at a certain point, let them join the conversation. You know, when you have those staff members that are a continual issue, we've all been there. We just hope that they sit in that meeting and they say, you know, would it be easier for me to resign? And we just cross our finger and we hope that they would and they would go away. Can't always do that, but they don't always resign. So it's a tough situation. So, you know, oftentimes I like to have the conversation with them, you know, quote unquote, I really think you need to evaluate if this is still a good opportunity for you to be a part of. And, you know, you hope a lot of staff that are struggling or, you know, constantly creating issues wind up self-selecting out of your organization. One of the things that I learned when I was at the Red Cross, every organization kind of has this 10-80-10, right? You have your top 10% of your staff that are going to be the next leaders. They're great, invest a lot of time into them. The middle 80% are going to be your workhorses, the diehards that are just there to have a good time. You know, they're there to work hard and do their job and then go home. And then you have that bottom 10% that really just struggle. And that 10%, you always have to figure out a way to manage them out of the organization. You have to figure out a way to get that 10% that is just not there for the right reasons. They're not ever going to get it. They're not going to change. You have to figure out a way to manage them out of the organization, because that's where the cancer starts, right? It's that little 10% that's going to grow from there. So, and you're always going to have that 10%. You know, Disney has that 10%. Disney's always had that 10%. They've got to manage out of the organization. You've all probably been in that place where you have that staff that they aren't changing and they're not going to get any better. So how do you find a way to manage them out?
Absolutely, yeah. I think Motivating the Middle is the book that comes to mind. It's a short, quick read, but it speaks on that. So definitely like that. One that I think is a really good question is talking about budgets, especially in the climate that we're in, with these employee recognitions and the different engagement activities that you have for your staff. Can you give us a little insight on, you know, what goes into that thought process and just how maybe it's we can't afford not to have these things, but what does that look like, creating the budget for those type of items?
Yeah, I promised I wouldn't talk about the current climate, so I'm not going to talk about the current climate. But you know, budgets are tough because, especially for most of us on the call, we're coming from a university, and very different than what you see in the pro world, where, you know, there's lots of money in the pro world for staff and taking care of staff and all the initiatives that you want to do and buying uniforms for them every single year. It's there for the pros, but not necessarily in a university setting. So it's tough. So this is where I would stress being creative and getting creative with your coworkers, your colleagues, to figure out how you can implement things that don't cost anything. So, you know, I went through a lot of different things that we do and things that we've created for our staff, and they don't really cost anything. You know, our years of service program is a certificate, it's a lapel pin, and then we put their name up on a recognition wall outside of our check-in area. And we're talking, you know, $50, $100 a year spent on some of those things. You know, you buy lapel pins once every 6, 7, 8 years. You just buy a batch. You plan on budgeting it, you know, once every 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So you just have to kind of plan out, you know, long term, what does this look like? How much do we really need to spend? You know, how can we do this without spending any money? You know, I said we do an end of the year banquet, and, you know, we make it very low key with that program. So we, instead of doing like a full dinner for our staff, we just do heavy appetizers for them. We're obviously not doing an open bar. You do a cash bar for them so they can buy their own beverages if they want. We didn't go out and buy centerpieces or decorations or anything. We got with our equipment staff, and they loaned us football helmets and basketballs and shoulder pads and size 18 shoes. And we actually put those in the center of all the tables, and the equipment was our centerpieces at this banquet. And, you know, the staff thought that was the coolest thing to see, you know, a game-worn helmet or, you know, game-worn pad sitting on the center of the table. So it's just finding creative ways to use your existing brand, your existing facilities, to create those recognition programs, to create those opportunities for them to engage. Every fall, we do kind of this kickoff event with our event staff, and it's kind of like a 3-4-fold thing that we've done for them. we open up a facility. So let's say we open up Ohio Stadium. They can bring some family members with them to the stadium, but it's their opportunity to come pick up their credential and pick up their handbook. So they'll have a vested interest. They want to come to this, but they can bring family and they can take a self-guided tour of the stadium. And then we got with our partners at Levy, and they always introduce new food concepts every year. And so they do practice runs in their concession stands. So they use our event as a practice run for new food concepts, or new nonprofit groups are coming into work, and they just do sampling of food for the event staff. So the event staff get some free food out of this event. So it's one of those events that's very low impact, high yield. Didn't take us time to plan this. We're literally opening up a building for self-guided tours, handing out some credentials. You know, Gene might speak for a few minutes. You know, we put a timeout. Gene will come and speak on a microphone, and they just wander around, have a good time with their family members. And it doesn't really cost us anything. And it, like I said, it's one of those low impact, high yield. We didn't spend a lot of time putting into it. We didn't spend a lot of resources or money, but it's huge for the event staff to get to participate or have that sort of opportunity to engage, especially with their family members. It means a lot to them.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the questions that we have as a group. I always want to thank you, Evan, for kind of giving us that full walkthrough. I think that's very insightful. Like I said before, from the very start of when you're doing hiring all the way to the evaluation portion of that. So that's great. Thanks to everybody else who joined us for today.